So, welcome, Mary.
Thank you.
I've been really looking forward to this dialogue.
Yes, me too. Me too.
So, I thought we might start with the title of our dialogue, which is Can Humanity Listen? So, I wonder how that question lands in you. What comes to you, if you would like to say, and then I'll also speak to the question before we go deeper into it.
Sure. Um, the first uh, thing or the first image that I have is of being listened to, noticing it, identifying with it for the first time. And that's many years ago when a teacher listened. I mean, listened to me. And I felt my heart change. I guess my heart opened in that moment.
Mm.
And it was very significantly different. And I noticed then the contrast when other people didn't do the same.
Mm. Yeah, that's beautiful. It actually reminds me of something a CEO client said to me after several coaching sessions. She came one day and she said, Nicholas, I've just begun to notice no one is really listening to anyone. She said, I can never forget, she said, I see someone speaking and I see it doesn't fully land.
Yes, yes.
It was like a wake up. So lovely. Thank you. Thank you for that. Um, so I think what comes to me is what a small bandwidth of perception we've normalized.
Yes.
So if we're listening at all, we're listening to a very small part of the multidimensionality of life. I think in general, we're not listening to ourselves first,
Yes.
meaning we don't have a self-awareness of what is really happening inside me because we're going too fast. We're going much too fast. So to actually listen, first of all, to myself, which means noticing what's really happening, I have to really slow down. So yeah, the first point of listening is to me. Then I may have space to listen to you, meaning a kind of
Yes.
self-contact of I'm here. And then I may be available to listen to you so that when you speak, I don't just hear your words. I'm really feeling your interior. This is what listening at first means to me. I feel your interior. I'm not just hearing your words.
So you're bringing in the an extra uh, modality, if you will, of really feeling. And that's quite something
Mm,
to actually listen. It also includes feeling. And the moment you start to feel, we start to slow down.
yes, yes. And when I say feeling, actually, I don't necessarily mean emotional. I mean sensing,
Okay.
sensing, sensing your interior, sensing a group, walking into a room and or a place. Very interesting. I know we're both very sensitive. So some places we're immediately when my wife and I are traveling or even entering a cathedral or a church and, oh, okay, that I feel the energy here. I sense the energy here. I sense the whole field here, or in part
You,
of a city or a town. It's fascinating. And the more my experience is that the more we're working on ourselves, the more we're opening and opening, the more subtle and precise that listening becomes. It's fascinating, actually.
I always remember going back to what I started with, being listened to,
Mm,
noticing what it felt like to be listened to the first
mm,
time. And
mm,
that was with a teacher, a trainer called Brad Brown. And I didn't fully hadn't fully known him at the time. He was a trainer, and when he listened to me, he took his attention off everything else
mm,
and was there for me. I felt so moved and honored that I was important for him.
mm.
And I noticed what occurred then was I also slowed down.
Right.
I wasn't trying to impress him. I was actually listening to myself, honoring him in a way of the exchange that developed. Uh, so it is something that we need to relearn.
Mm, mm. Absolutely. And whenever I ask leaders I work with if they remember the leaders they've worked for who had that quality of listening, and they all can remember that. So it's very powerful, as you say. And actually, I would call it a blessing.
That's beautiful.
I think when we listen in that way, and you described it beautifully, how you open in that field. And that, of course, also then takes us to the fact that almost all of us had nearly not enough of that as children.
Definitely, I would
And
say.
in a way, that's the whole beginning of the contraction of the heart. Because if we're a child and we're very open and feeling whatever we're feeling, and we don't feel that we're being met, my understanding and my experience and what I see in myself and others, we have only one choice. I have to
Contract.
confront.
And
And
that's
we're
pretty,
carrying that, then we're carrying that. And we do that many times. And
and it's that rush to get your words out so that it's quite it becomes a habit,
yes,
and then
beautiful.
eventually you don't listen to the person you're actually with because you've got to get your words out. You've got to make
Mm.
sure that you say what you want to say. I always remember
Right.
my daughter, I think she was about 8, and she said this, and it really, really landed with me. She said, "Mom, you're always not listening."
Mm.
And I really was stopped. And I remember I was driving and I pulled over and I said, "Darling, please say that again." "Mom, you
Mm.
heard me." And
Mm.
beautiful honesty that children have. There was something very true about that. I said, "I'll listen right now." And so began my process of listening to my children.
Mm.
It took
Mm.
time because there were a lot of habits to get past.
Right, right. That's very powerful. Yeah. And maybe then we can dive So we're touching beautifully what it means in this kind of interpersonal space, which is already huge. And in fact, we both know when we're working with clients that that quality of listening that we give, which is a kind of unconditional love, is already a healing. We feel it kind of because it's like our fabric of love everywhere has been so torn.
Yes.
And
I
it's
just,
almost as
yes,
if every moment of real listening is a little repair. But literally, I don't mean that metaphorically, in the fabric of our nervous system.
and that's very important. The idea that there is an exchange when two people meet, there's an exchange of energy, and it really is an act of love.
Mm,
I must say, growing up in a culture like Ireland, where I would say that people have more time,
mm,
and
mhm,
and there's a lot of humor, as you know, in that psyche and that culture.
mm,
But there's a sense of time to hear what you are saying.
mm,
And the humor is part of that.
mm.
It's a dialogue, an exchange is entertaining.
Right. I know exactly what you mean because it's very true of here in Puglia, in South
Really,
Italy. Absolutely. It's one of the things we most love. There's always, or not always, but very frequently, even in shops, there's time for this enjoyable exchange.
yes. I love it.
Really, it
I love
happened
it.
the other day in a shop we'd never been into, amazing delicatessen. And I started talking with the woman and we were joking and then I bought something and I said, I hope this is good. And she says it, oh no, but I promise you it is. And I said, I'll be back if it isn't. And we were just, we were just enjoying this exchange. So we've lost that in most places. It's very,
Yes, yes,
and then let's extend this, Mary, because I know, of course, that you also listen to many very subtle dimensions of life, as I do myself. But I think you have, very particular gifts for for tuning in to many dimensions that are not so available normally. And I think this started when you were young, right? Tell,
yes.
tell me about that.
I remember I was probably 10 and maybe younger, but we'll say 10. And my mother she was wonderful in how she taught us things. Her gifts did not extend into the everyday, but when she wanted or when it was time to be taught something, she was beautiful. She had this exquisite way of paying attention. I
Mm,
didn't know what it was called at the time, but I loved when mom would sit down with me and teach me about cooking. That was her art form, if you will. And it took me a long time to discern what it was that was different when I thought maybe it is mom, I have mom for myself. But actually, it was her attention on me. And she was very particular about teaching me correctly the ingredients, how to prepare the food. Because, and here was the thing, she absolutely knew I loved to cook
mm,
and I loved to learn. And she was an amazing cook. And we had that. The rest of the time, it was the total opposite. She was in a hurry. She had lots to do. She had four busy children. And the contrast was extraordinary. So I learned that very early. having mom, I call it having mom to myself,
Mm,
where she was slowed down, where she was interested, where she really wanted to be sure I understood. It
mm.
was, I learned when I learned that, I, I loved her for it. I
Mm,
just loved that she gave me her 100% attention.
mm.
And the rest of the time it wasn't available. Yes.
But so um, how did that, or was that part of you opening to, I don't know what to call it, the subtle world, the spiritual world? How did that support you in that? Or was that something different?
No, it was part of the same thing. I wouldn't have been able to discern at that age
Mm,
exactly what it was about being intuitive.
mm.
I use the word intuitive rather than psychic,
Yes.
because intuitive is a different, really is a different um, experience. And I can talk about that later if it's important. But to there is something slower, more precise. It's not random talking. It's not
Mm,
random. We're not using random words.
mm,
And so the precision of the language is very, it's very beautiful, in fact.
mm,
So learning to express what I was seeing, what I was observing, and these are all adult words now, um, were very rewarding.
mm,
So words mattered. Words were the vehicle to convey this energy, this knowing, this connection.
mm,
But they weren't the only thing. And that was what I learned later. So my presence with you right now, I feel you.
mm,
I
mm,
feel you are listening to me.
mm, mm.
And there's a whole lot going on in the listening.
Yes, the whole atmosphere of your childhood is transmitting itself to me.
Uh-huh.
It's beautiful.
Yes, yes. And I remember also very clearly one day, this neighbor came into our farm, and there was something, I've forgotten the detail of something about the animals. And my father said, "Will you take down to the horses?" And so I did. And as we were walking down, he didn't speak to me.
Mm,
And I thought, gosh, I hope I haven't been rude, or, this was very important that we were polite to adults. And after a while, I realized he was just in communion with me.
mm,
He was honoring this little girl
mm,
without talking.
mm.
And then I began to recognize there was a connection. We didn't have to speak.
Right, right.
And that was beautiful.
Mm,
And
mm,
every time I saw him, I used to watch him with my father. They didn't talk a lot. This man didn't
mm,
speak a lot, but he was so present.
mm.
And
Yeah.
I can remember, amazing.
Right. It's wonderful. Yeah, I could go on listening to you speak about your childhood for a long, long time. And I want to bring us more into now because I know, for instance, that, well, we both teach intuition or what we could loosely call intuition. Um, and I know you also, excuse me, you work with some very interesting clients, some very prominent figures as well, also in the political world. So, what are you seeing now, Mary? What are you seeing in the clients you work with? we can talk about our mutual experience. And how does intuition, what you call intuition, play a part, both in how you work with them and in what you help them to open in themselves?
So, one of the things that is very striking generally is that, for example, I have a client that comes to see me probably once a month or once every
Mm.
2 months, and they only, excuse me, stay 15 to 20 minutes.
Mm.
They book an hour, but they only often need 15 to 20 minutes.
Mm.
And I just kind of question that and think maybe I'm not interesting enough or something. But actually, they got everything they needed in that
Mm.
length of time. And
Mm.
here's what I've learned. When I work intuitively, and people come and they want some information, if it's about their business or relationship or whatever, this
Mm.
is a particular focus.
Mm.
I'm very attentive to their question. So, for example, and this isn't a real example, but it's an example of what could happen.
Mm.
Somebody wants to talk about their relationship. And so, when they do, I will invite them to, can you just describe the problem as you experience it?
Mm.
So we don't have a 15-minute complaint.
Mm.
Instead, we have a description of what is really going on.
Mm.
And in that moment, I call it tuning in,
Mm.
really just being present. And I would say, well, I wonder if you actually recognize that whilst you were talking to me, you said the same thing twice. This must be important. And in one instance, it was about his relationship with his partner, not his wife, but his partner. They were together a long time. And he was saying the same thing, but never communicated it to her. And
Mm.
it was that she would not answer his question. And he was irritated. So he spent the entire time furious with her. Now,
Mm.
this sounds very simple, but this is how difficulties begin
Mm.
in relationship.
Mm.
People hold on to resentment, to criticism, to uh, and sometimes they're furious and then they stop listening altogether.
Mm.
And so being intuitive and being available for people is actually cutting out all the dross. I call
Mm.
it the dross.
Mm.
Just saying something very simple. And the same is about then if you extend it to investing money or whatever, cut out all that noise. And so I have a standard answer, which is, well, if I were you, I wouldn't invest my money there.
Right. Right.
So the point
Yeah,
that
but but you're also listening. I know that's what's lovely hearing that. And I also know you're listening to much wider fields sometimes,
yes, yes,
much wider fields. Um, for instance, we used to lead a lot of programs together. And we once led an extraordinary retreat in the desert in Israel.
yes,
I think none of us who were there will ever forget it. Three of us were leading, you, me, and the third person. And because we trusted your intuition, you would get information every day about what we should be doing that day. And we just totally listened and enacted what information you received. And it reminds me of one of my great teachers, Thomas Hubel, used to say, because he used to say all the information is there
I love that.
about everything. And I've gradually learned the truth of that. Not that I get all the information, but compared to even a year ago, whenever I'm with someone or in any place, there's so much more information available.
I love that.
And
And
that's a very, I think that's a faculty we've just completely lost in our
the other
speed of
thing,
thought, our disconnection from the body, our disconnection from a sense of inner space, silence. That's where, and I teach quite high level coaches, and after a while, they're astonished when they start to notice more information is available, and it doesn't come through thinking.
one of the delights, plus we had a lot of humor together when we were working,
Yes, of
and
course,
a lot of arguments too,
that's
which
true.
which were great. I mean, it was great that we could do both,
Yeah.
that we could agree and disagree and all of that. But what I enjoyed most about working with you, Nicholas, was your ability to slow down
Mm,
and discuss what was going on.
mm,
So there wasn't a rush, and it was very significant to the course we were running. And we had a wonderful retreat, but it took us a while to get
yeah.
into
Mm. Well, we ended with a unforgettable 28-hour grief ritual,
completely.
which was I mean, I will never forget that.
No, we have our minds and our habits and our way of relating is
Mm,
so cluttered that when we go, for example, we go on retreat, we actually have to almost undo that
for sure.
and learn to be quiet and trust being quiet.
Mm,
And then out of that, a new way of speaking occurs. And it
mm,
sounds ordinary at first, but
mm,
actually, we begin to listen to each other.
mm,
And I just find that it's a moment in time when
mm,
I feel I can speak and I'll be listened to.
mm. It's kind of like the plug goes back in.
Yeah, that's very true.
It's
It's
like the current was off, literally, like the current of life was off. And suddenly I call it even sometimes, I say it's like we took the USB out of our bodies, of our hearts, of our intuition.
and
And
the,
then we need to cultivate the conditions in which these connections start to be reformed, because in many cases they were broken a long time ago, and they were
yeah,
broken in the family lineage and the collective fabric and so on. We know that. We know that. So when you tune into where we are, where is humanity now? I know this is a big question. And I know we've spoken deeply about this. Even we met recently for lunch and we were talking about this threshold that humanity is at. And I remember very vividly what you said, something that really landed with me. You said there is a very new frequency here now, which I also feel at times very clearly. And you also said, because it's so new, we don't fully have a map for it. We can't even describe it exactly. I can feel that in myself. Let's please discuss. Because I think this is incredible. What your perception of what's happening, your intuition of what's happening to humanity at this moment.
it's very immediate. We're eager to open our hearts and connect with each other. I would say that that is foremost.
Mm,
Now, we could also say that's always been there, but it's been so layered, covered
mm,
in language that really is not that interesting if you really think about it, because there's no heart.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
It's just talking.
Hmm.
Uh, so, really, if they, as there, well, I better not say if there is a higher order. And I don't mean better, I just mean a different frequency.
Mm,
And that frequency wants to convey a sense of light,
mm,
a sense of our um, advancement. And these words make us sound less than. I want to be careful how I use the language.
mm,
It's really about, we tend to, when we move in, let me say it this way, when we move into a different frequency and we are exchanging with each other, we forget time,
mm.
forget the order of things. A new order is there. I listen to you, you
Right.
listen to me. We're not competing with each other.
Mm,
We're not actually trying to hold the stage, if you will.
mm,
Actually exchanging because we are responding to that other level. And
mm,
that's a different dimension. That dimension is communicating with us, to
mm,
us. And we are, if you like, transcribing, but we're
mm,
transcribing
mm,
in words. It's it seems to be slower, but actually, what it is the words are almost given to us.
mm.
It's very subtle, but I think you know what I mean.
It's yes. Yeah, I have to really receive what you're saying. Um, and what I get is that actually what you're speaking about is a kind of state. That we're not talking about I suddenly receive something from somewhere else. What you're speaking about is deeper than that. It's it's a kind of dissolution of these boundaries of identity that we get very programmed into. The fundamental sense of I'm here and the world is out there. And we know, we experience, as do many people now, that as we work and that dissolves more, it's like we're inherently then in a much bigger field. So it's not and there is less of me here and something out there, right? I think this is
Absolutely.
what you're speaking to. This is what,
Yes.
and
And
this is
it's less
very
about,
new. This is new. It's like well, it's, yeah, it's both old and new at the same
yes, that's what I was going to say.
time.
It
Right.
is about, and years and years ago, I remember being with my father on the farm. And
Mm,
I'd bring him tea. I mean, this is my favorite thing in the whole world to do
mm.
was bring tea to my father in a gallon, in a gallon. I'd sit with him. We wouldn't speak.
Mm,
And it was glorious.
mm,
It was just a sense of presence. The scenery was exquisite. It was quiet, but we were so present to each other.
mm,
I love those
mm,
times. Probably have half an hour, 20 minutes, or half an hour. It was the favorite thing. I would
mm.
rush home from school and go out and be on and I had to take about 20 minutes to get out to the farm where he was and sit with him. He wouldn't
Mm.
talk to me very much. And then I learned to stay quiet.
Right.
And it was
Beautiful.
exquisite.
It's in a way, I've often found myself using the word exile,
Mm.
that we've come to a point of living in such exile. And in a way, you're speaking so beautifully to kind of being really at home, not
Yes,
just home in ourselves, but home in the world, in a kind of deep presence, which is inherently full rather than in the scarcity that our individual identity is so much founded on, which we're always trying to get something, we're always trying to
yes,
get filled by something because there's this scarcity inside.
yes.
And what you're speaking to is the absolute antidote to that.
Yeah, correct. I mean, if I were to describe, and often I've not been able to, I've been able to write about it a little, just those moments of being with my father, but
Mm,
also with my mother as well in different scenarios, and just be nonverbal, but
mm,
really feeling, feeling the countryside,
mm,
the
mm,
fields, the animals, and the animals would come up and speak to us.
mm, mm,
It was very exquisite.
mm,
I don't know if that's the word I would use. It was
mm,
natural. And I remember when I left home to go to boarding school, I was so bereft
mm,
because I truly knew that I was leaving behind
mm,
something that I would never have again.
mm,
You know,
mm,
we didn't have a car, we didn't have a tractor,
mm,
you know, we had horses and we had, you know, donkeys and we had animals, but there was no real anything else. But we were very busy.
right.
We were,
So, yeah, that's beautiful. So, Mary, how does this all sit in you now, living in London, working in high-powered environments?
I
How does
find
this sit in you now?
uh, at times quite lonely, and I want to describe that lonely for that life,
Mm,
lonely for connection, true connection. And, you know, I think you and I have talked about this fairly recently. Who do we have true
mm,
connection with?
mm.
Not as many people as we would love to have true connection with.
It's certainly relatively few, yeah. For me too, yeah.
And I mean, I love my friends, and it's really how do we claim that back? And
Mm,
what I've discovered, I've often noticed it in my work, that people are afraid
mm,
quiet
for sure.
and to allow the silence. It has to be filled in.
Of course.
And that is something that it's okay to be quiet.
Mm,
It's okay to let there be, you know, moments of my appreciating, my goodness, my friend is here.
mm. I think where most people are afraid of the silence because they start noticing how much anxiety they're carrying, for
I
instance.
think that's correct.
So
I
it's
think you're
much
right.
easier to keep talking rather than
Yes.
feel that.
Yes.
For sure, for sure. Actually, um, I was remembering the other day, I teach at the IMD Business School, and I typically have 40 or so senior execs from all around the world. And one time, a few months ago, at the end of the second day, a Saudi man came up to me and he said, Nicholas, I'm going to be very honest with you. He said, yesterday, your whole way of talking, your slow rhythm was driving me nuts. He said, I just couldn't stand it. But I have to tell you that today I've loved it. And it was just, and because on the second day we'd worked at a much deeper level, we'd got more connected with the body. People had started to be very vulnerable emotionally. So he'd arrived at this place of much greater self home. And from that space, he liked the silence. He loved it. It's fascinating, that change, that change.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
And that he really wanted to come and tell me that was just a gem. It was one of those things you remember for a long time.
I remember, and I wonder if you've had these experiences, but having silence with my father, I mentioned already, but with the family, we didn't have to talk. We would sit by the fire. We had an
Mm,
open
mm,
fire, and we would sit by the fire, and often there was silence.
mm,
So somewhere we speeded up and we had to say and we had to speak. And without listening to anybody, we
mm,
just say our
mm,
piece. And we
mm,
didn't. And so in your workshop, I'd imagine you haven't told me what you were doing particularly, but when people get time to
mm,
slow down and they meet what's in their hearts, and sometimes it's difficult, it's painful, but they get to express it.
mm.
They free up.
Yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, and the whole level of speaking changes because people start speaking more truthfully and more, and in a way, it's both simpler and deeper.
Yes.
It's very interesting. And as I often say, and I know for sure, because anyway, it's a very old principle, that we have to slow down in order to go very fast sometimes, but very fast with precision and ease, what people call being in flow or in sports in the zone. It comes from this deep interior slowing down. It's very interesting. So I have a bit of a radical suggestion as we comes to me as we move towards a last part of our dialogue. Why don't we have a few moments silence? And I'm going to ring a beautiful gong that I bought in India a while back. And let's see what comes to us as a way of
Hmm,
next step. Would that be okay with you?
beautiful.
Okay. mm. So one thing that came very strongly to me, I don't often actually think in imagery or not so much thinking, but what came was a very, very strong image of like dams bursting and water, fresh water coming into very barren land,
Mm.
and that water bringing life and regeneration and life.
Gosh, I love that. You know, it's interesting to hear you speak. One of the things that we typically do, is certainly I've done a lot in the past, is rehearse what I'm going to say. And yet, as an intuitive,
Mm,
I have no idea what I'm going to say in the moment.
mm,
And so I always, or when I'm teaching or working in this field, I don't say anything initially, and I wait. And often there's, silence, maybe a little uncomfortable because it's, a kind of gap, maybe. And then it comes. And so for now, in this moment, I want to say, and I don't know what it is. Um, the time is here. The time was always here. It's not the time is coming. The
mm,
time is here. We are learning to listen. And as we do, beautiful fountains open up. But they've always been there.
mm,
And
mm,
we are becoming present.
mm,
And those words touch me deeply.
mm.
I'm often reminded about how once upon a time the animals would be present to us and vice versa. So that now it takes a lot to tame the animals so they
Mm,
don't rush away from us, or they we have to be aware of them. But actually there was a time, and there can be again, and there will be again, when the animals are present to us and we are present to them.
mm, mm,
We used to have this wonderful man who lived next door to us where I grew up, and there would be silence while he smoked his pipe, and he would say nothing, and after a while, say nothing again. And it was very beautiful. He was full of these sort of
mm,
maxims, because he's smoking his pipe was often all you could hear
mm,
by the fire,
mm,
the crackling of the wood, and then eventually there'd be some some discussion about something, but it came out of the silence.
Mm,
Didn't come out of the mind, it came out of the silence.
mm. I think we could finish in a way with a by simply speaking a prayer that we both hold deeply in our hearts.
Mhm.
May humanity remember what it means to listen.
Brings tears to my eyes.
Mm. And I'm deeply touched by who you are, Mary, and the depth of your experience and the enchantment of and the difficulty of your early life and everything. Thank you. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you. And time has stood still this morning. We've
Mm.
had this.
Exactly. Yes.
We've had this a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
It's a joy, Nicholas. It's a joy to spend time with you.
Mm.
Thank you.
Thank you.